22 female MPs will make it to Parliament after today's casual elections. 18-year-old Eve Bonello becomes youngest MP in Maltese history, and PN stalwart Jason Azzopardi was not re-elected to Parliament. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo. Johnathan Cilia here, joined by Gianluca Barbara. We've got the latest updates from the 2022 general election, what seems to be the very end of the election coverage for this year. Definitely stay tuned to the end of today's episode. We've got the newest MP, the youngest MP in Malta, Eve Bonello, in the house to speak to us about being elected. But before that, let's jump into today's top story, major story. 22 female MPs will make it to Parliament after today's casual elections, as well as the application of the controversial gender quota mechanism. We've got some very new names that will be representing the Maltese people in Parliament, including Eve Bonello, as well as Julie Zara, as well as Rebecca Cilia, Graham Bencini, and so many more. In fact, we have a full list of the 22 names on lovinmalta.com. Apart from that, there were some big surprises. Some names that were expected to be re-elected did not get re-elected, such as Carol Aquilina, as well as Jason Azzopardi, which we'll be speaking about a little bit more in detail soon. Now, if you're not aware, you know, the island has been making a big push to get more females in Parliament, and this is the first time that the gender quota mechanism was applied. With 22 MPs, that means we now have 27.8% of the Parliament made up of females, which is significantly higher than the last legislature, which was just 13%, making this the most female parliament Malta's ever had. We're still below the EU average, which is around 33% for females in parliament, but it's a step in the right direction, even though the mechanism to get there might be controversial. So let us know in the comments below what you make of that.
Well, initially following the casual elections, 10 women were elected in parliament, and now following the gender quota, another 6 came from the PL and another 6 came from the PN. So now, as you said, John, we have a very, very large contingent of female politicians in our MP fold. Some received this in a mixed way, with many Maltese hailing the mechanism for doing exactly what it was supposed to do and bringing more females into parliament, whereas on the other hand, it possibly dilutes the philosophy behind democracy, following the fact that 12 MPs in fact did get in without getting elected, you could say. There were also some issues in the sense that ADPD Sandra Gauci got more votes than, say, PL Davina Samut Healy, and she did not make the cut in that regard. That aside, Maltese politicians, female politicians, now have a golden chance to show their stuff. It could be a golden opportunity for them to really take the country forward. And moving on to our next story, on the same lines as well, Eve Bonello, who did make the cut, who is now an MP, Malta's youngest ever MP in all of history. Initially we thought that perhaps she could be the youngest in the world, but turns out that it was not the case, unfortunately. Yet, Eve Bonello started out in 2021 when she became appointed as the president of Team Start, which is the PN's teenage wing. She announced her candidature just 9 days before Prime Minister Roberta Bella called this general election. She barely had time to campaign. I guess you could say that she took it up a notch by actually getting elected. She will be featuring here on Lovin Malta after this. Good things could come out of this, John.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, so she's 18 years old, which is mind-blowing to me. When I was 18, I don't think I was in any position to be running in Parliament, you know, making decisions that are going to affect so many people, hundreds of thousands of people. However, she has been very, very active in politics for years now. She's faced so much harassment online as well. If you remember, a few months ago, we had actually done a video production in collaboration with her, as well as, you know, people from Labour Party, as well as Sandra Gauci, the aforementioned Sandra Gauci, to show kind of the harassment they face online. She's one of the most harassed female politicians, and I can only imagine, you know, it's only going to get worse for her. So thank God she has a bit of a solid skin, you know, and she's ready for it. She might not be the youngest MP in the world, but she's definitely among the handful of youngest representatives in the world, just 18. So hats off to her. Now the next 5 years, as Gianluca said, they have a golden opportunity, her and the other women that got elected, to kind of prove their worth, which I am really looking forward to. On the other side of the scale, though, as someone who many people have been used to in politics for decades now, will no longer be involved in the way he was. Jason Azzopardi, who's one of the most outspoken PNMPs in Malta. He's also the lawyer of the Daphne Caruana Galizia family in the assassination murder case. Was not re-elected. He was possibly going to be re-elected after there were casual elections on the 9th and 10th district. However, these it didn't happen. Instead, Graziella Attard Previ was elected, which means that Jason Azzopardi, which is one of the longest serving PNMPs, was not elected. He actually posted on social media kind of saying, thank you for everyone that supported me. He said this quote marks the end of 24 years of hard work, as well as 34 years of activity within the PN. And he thanked, baby Jesus for all the lessons he's learned over the years. Now, while he might not have been elected, Gianluca, I am sure this is not the last we're going to be seeing of Jason Azzopardi.
No, most definitely. In fact, he vowed to continue his work with the same zeal, his work for the country. In the same post, in fact, he said that he is going to recover his work in his own career, in his own profession. He's been a practicing lawyer for a long time, and he had to let a part of that go in his pursuit as he continued his journey in politics. Now have a chance to recover that. Unfortunately, he was practically part of the furniture as a PNMP in the PM fold. Many people knew him. But I suppose you could say that it paved the way for some young blood to come in that regard as well. And moving on to our next story, we have an environmental NGO, BirdLife Malta, and hunting lobby group FKNK, which is the Federation for Hunting and Conservation, locking horns over the reopening of spring hunting this season for the turtle dove. The turtle dove, which is known as Gamema Maltese, it's on the red list, classified as a vulnerable species by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Just yesterday, BirdLife Malta announced legal action against the opening of spring hunting on the European turtle dove for this year. It came after the Malta Ornis Committee, which is the committee that oversees the welfare and takes certain decisions on which species are to be hunted on during hunting season, actually took a vote to lift the ban on the hunting of turtle doves. Hunting season opens this Sunday. In response, the FKNK released a statement earlier this morning assuring hunters that they're going to do everything they can to make sure that hunting season carries on. This is a bit of a controversial topic, with one side hunters really looking forward to carry out their hobbies as they would on normal grounds, but at the same time the vulnerability of a species could pose a little bit of a problem, which would be received quite badly generally.
Absolutely. Hunting in Malta is one of the most bitter, one of the most heartfelt, emotional topics. You have people who are either related to environmentalists or people who are related to hunters, often fighting it out between themselves. Lovin Malta will definitely be staying abreast of this story. If I'm not mistaken, there's even some legal tactics in here to kind of maybe halt the hunting season before it starts. So, if there's any developments in this, Lovin Malta will definitely be reporting them. Moving on to the final story, a bit of an international one, a bit of a horrifying one, right? If I do say so myself. Videos are going viral on social media showing residents of Shanghai, China, who have been locked in their high-rise apartments for about a week now as part of COVID-19 measures, going to their windows, opening their windows and screaming and shouting outside the windows in protest. In response to this, the government have actually sent drones in that are appearing in front of the windows and telling residents to, quote, control their soul's desire for freedom and comply with lockdown. The video is on lovinmalta.com as well as our Instagram page. It is a bit of a scary watch. It feels very, dystopian, like you're seeing these big high rises in the darkness, drones flying around and people shouting and screaming. It makes you wonder, are we living in a movie? Is this a simulation? What's going on there?
No, if something like this had happened in Malta, I can't imagine people keeping to their windows. There would be protests everywhere, but and they don't blame them for that. It's It's kind of like a old world communism meeting new world technology, so to speak. I mean, at the same time, Shanghai entered a lockdown, a full lockdown, you could say, on the 5th of April in response to a spike in COVID cases, and they're using every tool at their disposal to ensure that nobody breaks the rules.
Absolutely, you know, so let us know in the comments below whether you think the Chinese government's going too far or too little. Maybe we should roll out some measures like that in Malta. Would you like to see drones outside people's houses, ensuring that they're abiding by the COVID-19 measures? We are going to soon have our special guest interview in the house, Eve Bonello, the Honourable Eve Bonello, as it were now. Before that, I do want to remind you that we have the Lovin Recommends 2022 Epic Foodie giveaway coming up very, very soon. This is an insane giveaway worth thousands of euros, where you can be having free meals at so many great restaurants around Malta. Stay tuned to the 20th of April, just a few days away, for more details on how to sign up for this. We're going to cut to a video now, and when we're back, we'll have Eve Bonello. Stay tuned. What's up, Lovin Malta fam? It is midday, and in true annual April Fool's style, this is not a drill. The Lovin Malta Epic Foodie giveaway, brought to you by Lovin Recommends 2022, is 100% real and set to launch. We will be revealing more details on how you can participate in the coming days, with over 100 restaurants and eateries already geared to tickle your taste buds. That's more than 100 meals worth over 5,000 euros of dinners for two. Stay tuned for instructions on how you and one friend could walk away with 1 year of eating out at every restaurant that's worth its weight in salt across the island. Keep your eyes peeled, your friends close, and be sure to work up a good appetite. The Epic Foodie giveaway has just landed. Coming soon. Lovin Recommends.
Welcome back to Lovin Daily. I'm Tim Diacono. With me now is Eve Bonello, or Honourable Eve Bonello, newly elected.
Call me Eve.
Newly elected nationalist MP. So first of all, congratulations, Eve, for
Thank you
being
so much.
the youngest ever Maltese MP in history, and currently, we believe, the youngest MP in the world. So quite a big achievement.
No pressure.
No pressure. So, Eve, Carmen Bonici is your lecturer, now is also going to be your parliamentary colleague. In the morning, he's going to be lecturing you. In the evening, you're going to be discussing new laws together. Are you looking forward to this, or is it going to be awkward?
Much obvious. I mean, I am more than sure that the lecturers who are now my colleagues are more than capable of being professional, and they always have been, so I'm going into it pretty confident that it's business as usual.
And what about university life? You're expecting any differences there?
I mean, it's going to be a challenge, obviously, to balance my studies and parliament, but just as other MPs can get to balance their career as lawyers, doctors, engineers with being an MP, I'm sure I could balance my studies.
So, as we said, you're the youngest MP in history. Many people at the moment are questioning your experience, the fact you're 18 years old. Do you feel prepared for this role?
I do feel prepared in the sense that our democracy is representative, and every other generation is represented within our parliament. So why not have 18-year-olds represented? I mean, if 16-year-olds get to vote, they get to be represented by someone who understands them, and who better understands a young person than a young person.
What's the first thing you want to be working on?
There are a lot of things that I would love to work on, but in particular, the first thing that comes to mind, although I'm not really sure if it's something by Parliament, but I'm definitely going to push for it, is to remove the barricades in front of Parliament, because Parliament is meant to be belonging to the people, and I feel that is just a horrible symbol of what our democracy could come to when we let people do certain things.
So just to clarify, we're talking about the the barricades that were erected outside Parliament
In 2019.
in the wake of the protests
Echo.
of following the arrest of Jogan Fenech, and that have somehow remained there throughout.
I'd like to see them removed because, as I said, even the architecture of our parliament, it shows that parliament belongs to the people. And I feel having those barricades there, it's also a reminder of a really dark past. I'm not saying we should forget our past, we should still fight for justice, but we have to understand that it should be a stepping stone forward. Parliament belongs to the people, not to... Parliamentarians shouldn't be afraid of people, we're there to represent the people.
So even though they were erected when people were literally throwing tomatoes and eggs at them, there were some concerns raised about the physical safety of MPs.
Fair enough, but people aren't throwing eggs anymore at the moment, so I don't really see any excuse to keep having barricades separating us from the people.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point. So you signed a pledge with a prominent pro-life group that if you get elected, you're not going to vote in favour of any pro-abortion bills or measures that may or may not be presented in Parliament. So if you're faced with a pro-abortion bill, will you vote against it?
The thing is, I believe life begins at conception, but another reason why I don't think certain decisions would make sense to be taken now is the fact that I could speak really honestly about this because only a few years ago I was in secondary school. The fact that we have such horrible education about the topic, we have to understand that sexual education and sex ed and teaching safe sex practices isn't there as an incentive, but it's purely there to equip people with the tools to look at reality and face it and deal with it as a preventative measure. So before we even have something like that, how could we possibly go to another extreme?
Well, but there already is a bill at the moment. It was presented by Marlene Farrugia. It's remained on the shelf so far. So if that somehow ends up in Parliament, will you vote against it?
Yes, because I feel like it wouldn't make sense currently, as I said.
Currently? So when will it make sense?
The thing is, life begins at conception, but my point here is it especially doesn't make sense because if we look at examples like the stereotypical example of Eastern Europe, which didn't have access to a lot of contraceptives, would end up using abortion as a contraceptive. So we're definitely, I wouldn't be someone who would push that sort of agenda.
So it should remain illegal then, and women should face the threat of the law and the police arresting them or doctors as well if they conduct an abortion in Malta.
I mean, there are other options for them, but within our jurisdiction, it's not allowed.
So just to be clear, you don't believe that women should have a choice to get an abortion in Malta, even if the woman's life is in danger?
The thing is, when we talk about this certain, I don't know what you'd call it, this certain case, it is very much rhetoric because if we look at the past 50 years, we didn't really have these cases where a woman died because of a complication in pregnancy. And we see the majority of cases where a woman would have to choose between saving their kid or themselves not in pregnancy and labor. Usually the woman themselves would choose their kid. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about these situations, they are a really small minority, and in the past 50 years we haven't seen anything like it.
What about if the woman is raped?
That's another question as well. But as I said, when we're talking about life, we have to be very careful and we have to look about the statistics behind these things as well.
And that means no abortion in any circumstances?
As things stand, I don't think it makes sense.
Okay, so you're elected via the gender quota mechanism. You're one of the first MPs ever to be elected by it. A year ago you wrote this article in the Times of Malta, a lot of people are sharing it today. It was quite critical of gender quotas, and you ended it by saying we need to get it out of our heads that women need quotas to be elected.
I still disagree with gender quotas, and if there was another vote in Parliament about them, I would vote against them.
Really? How come?
I would vote against them because, first of all, they backfired totally. They backfired so much that less women were elected this time round through the original election, although it's sort of balanced out once we got to the casual elections. But the Maltese voter wants control over who represents them, and it's only fair. It's basic democracy. So once you limit Maltese voters' control, they will rebel. As they rebel this time round. We saw stalwarts, people who have been elected before suffering because of this as well. So I personally I wouldn't vote in favor of the gender quota bill, even if it would impact me, because I believe women are capable of getting there alone, and this is something that held women back.
But if you really want to send a strong message, wouldn't it have been more effective if you just said, I refuse to be elected via this quota, and I'm going to take a stand, and I'm not going to be elected by it? Why did you choose to get elected by it if you're so much against it?
The only reason I wouldn't give up my seat based on my belief of that the quota was counterproductive is that it would be super, super disrespectful to those people who voted for me despite knowing that their vote might have weighed less because of the quota. And I have a responsibility to those people who voted for me. And I mean, I already passed the threshold of the district in terms of the quota of the district, not the gender one. So once again, I have a responsibility to these people, and even with their faith entrusted in me, and even from the results of this election, I don't feel like the people believe in this quota.
Do you think it's discriminatory against men?
More than discriminatory against men, I feel it's a bit, I'm trying to find the right word, I feel it's a bit demeaning to women, and as I said, extremely...
You feel demeaned right now?
It's demeaning to women in the sense that it's puts up this idea that you need a quota to get elected, and it backfired so much, as I said, that people aktar u aktar ma votawx għan-nisa. Where we should have a smaller parliament and a full-time parliament, and there are so many measures that would actually help with this positive discrimination. More than positive discrimination, it is setting up a standard that accommodates both the fact that parliament doesn't have in-house daycare, the fact that parliament is part-time, so dak li jkun they'd have work in the morning, then parliament in the evening, where a lot of women usually dedicate their mornings to their career and their evenings to the family. So now we're putting female politicians in a position where they don't have to choose between their family and their career, but they have to choose between their family and two careers. So there's a lot more that could be done.
So Sandra Gauci, ADPD Sandra Gauci got more votes than Labour's Davina Samut-Healy. Davina Samut-Healy has got elected via the quota system. Sandra Gauci hasn't. Is this fair?
The thing is, when we always speak about third parties, I feel it's more of a question about our STV voting system, which I love. The reason I really believe in the STV voting system, especially in these arguments relating to third parties, is other countries which have the STV voting system have a billion parties, just for the sake of a metaphor, in their parliament. We don't have those parties in parliament because people simply reject them. And the thing is, not even local councils. I mean, the local councillors who wouldn't fall under PN and Labour were independent. They weren't even part of third parties, as in. So when we look at the scenario, it is simply what the people want. And the fact that ADPD and these other parties do not get elected is because the people choose against that. And it's not an ideological battle of PNPL and a duopoly, because the thing is, the beauty of our SCV voting system is that even within two parties, it's a range of ideologies. On the PN ticket, you had people contesting who were super conservative and people who were contesting that were super liberal. What a party looks like depends on the people. So I don't really buy into this narrative.
So just to clarify, the issue isn't the system, the issue is the party, the small party itself.
I mean, if they've been trying from the 90s and never got elected, I don't think it's anything else but that, honestly.
Okay, so some people are saying that you should be grateful to Joseph Muscat because the quotas were his ideas. What's your message to Joseph Muscat as an MP?
I'm not grateful to criminals.
Finally, do you see yourself as you got elected, you made history. Do you see yourself as a future Prime Minister?
I'm coming out of the most stressful month of my life and I mean, I don't know what the future holds for me, but what I know for sure is that I intend to remain loyal to the people who elected me and to remain very close to them, because our democracy is representative, as I've stated multiple times, and I'd be a horrible representative if I don't know what the people want. So what I definitely want to do from tomorrow, I'm going to be continuing house visits to remain very close to the constituents and those who put their faith in me and those who might have not put their faith in me, to convince them for next time.
Yves Bonello, thank you very much for being with us here today. Our first interview since becoming an MP. It's going to be quite an eventful 5 years. in Parliament, and wish you the very best of luck. Make sure you follow lovinmalta.com and have an evening full of loving.